Mike Zaccardi, again, from the University of North Florida, finance major there. Chairman Bernanke, thank you for coming again. And my question would be, you've mentioned that the Federal Reserve sees an extended period of low inflation, which could threaten the economy, potentially leading to deflation. I see commodity prices since the summer of this year skyrocketing. You look at soft commodities such as cotton, sugar, you name it. Cotton has nearly doubled since the summer, and it seems like producers are eating most of that price increase. But I think there's a possibility that could be trickling down to the consumer next year. Do you foresee any possibilities that threaten your outlook for low inflation? Do you think that there's a possibility of higher inflation next year?
Well, you're absolutely right that the one exception to the general observation that inflation has been coming down is that globally traded commodities like energy and food and other commodities have been going up pretty sharply. And the reason for that basically is because the supply and demand is determined on a global level, and emerging markets are growing quite quickly, and the demand for those commodities is pretty strong. So that is going to be a contributor to inflation in the U.S. because it'll affect, for example, gas prices and so on. Our research and our experience, though, suggests that, generally speaking, when you have a situation like we have today, where there's a lot of slack in the economy, a lot of excess supply, that it's very, very difficult, as you were saying, for producers to push through those costs to the final consumer. In addition, most of the costs of producers have are labor costs, and wages have been growing relatively slowly. Productivity has been growing relatively strongly, which means that overall the cost of labor per unit of production is in some cases actually falling. So though you have higher materials costs or higher energy costs, you have lower labor costs. So you put that all together and you don't expect to see very much inflation, or you don't expect to see very much of the commodity prices being passed through to final goods and services, with a few obvious exceptions, like gasoline, of course. So we do believe that because of the great deal of slack in the economy, that inflation is likely to stay quite low going into next year. And although, as you say, commodity prices are an issue that we're watching very carefully, I think it's going to take at least some growth, some further growth, and some further reduction in slack before we begin to see any kind of inflation pressure. At that point, of course, we're going to have to be sure to modify our amount of stimulus to make sure that we maintain stable prices in the long term.